So, this story will be up on YouTube and on the podcast because I think it's important to share this with you. The world is a little wonky these days, and I just feel it's important to share a good, positive story. Sometimes we don't do things that we want to do for a long time, and then when we do, we're so glad we did it. And that is the case of what happened with me. I tried to, I had my DNA tested. I was trying to find birth family. I wanted to have that hole in my life and my heart filled, or at least, get enough information to make it feel like it was filled. So, in 2016, I did the DNA stuff and hired a genealogist. And I'm actually a researcher by trade. So it's really weird that I hired somebody else. But, I knew her through her sister, and I figured it's so emotional. Let me just hire somebody else to do it and see if there's anything, because I was not seeing anything and I couldn't figure it out. And it was just, I just couldn't do it. But anyway, so I hired somebody. She did the research. She came back and said, had me meet with her at her house. And she said, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but your birth dad is dead. He died at age 55. And, that's, I can't connect you. And that's the only, person that I can really find. So I was upset. And my mother's side, nobody was coming on. So what happened, fast forward to 2019, I went to Maine with a friend of mine and Flynn, and we had a wonderful time. I'll put some pictures in here. Got to see Stephen King's house with his crazy gate and fence, like iron fence, with all the crazy characters. Saw the beautiful ocean and all the cute little towns and enjoyed it. And headed back, took my friend to the airport. Flynn and I headed to New York State. That's where I grew up in New York State. And so I decided to contact the widow of my father because I thought I'll be in New York State. Maybe she'll tell me something, even just about, like, show me pictures and just tell me, was he funny? Did he have a sense of humor? Did he like dogs? What? Just give me some kind of information about him. Did I have his eyes or something? And if there's any way that she knew any information about my birth mom, too. So I heard nothing. There's crickets, absolute crickets. Didn't hear anything at all. And I thought, all right, God, I guess it's not meant to be, right? It's not meant to be. All you can do is pray and try, and that's it. So all of a sudden, as I'm literally crossing into New York State over the state line, I get a message, and it was from her. And she was saying, how do I know that you're legit? Which you can't blame her. There's some wonky stuff that happens because I had messaged her on Facebook. That's how I tracked her down that way. So I didn't blame her. So I gave her some more details. And then I didn't hear anything again for a while from her. So, anyways, so what happened was all of a sudden I'm visiting with my friend Julie. That's why I went there to visit with her. And we're staying in the Ithaca area for a little bit to just see some of her favorite spots and hang out and catch up because it'd been a while since we've been together. And I've known Julie for like 20 something years, a long time now. So what happened was all of a sudden this woman was calling and, well, she got my number from me. She was calling and texting, whatever. And it was just, it was annoying. And I thought something's wrong. Like, this just didn't feel right. Right. And let me just, as a side note, please follow your gut on this stuff, because the fact is sometimes people are up to nothing good. And it doesn't mean that the other person they're trying to connect you with or should be connecting you with is wonky like that either. But just a heads up, follow your gut. The spirit will lead, right? What ended up happening was that Julie and I and Flynn were hiking through these gorges, they're called, in Ithaca. And they are gorgeous, and they're really, there's no signal. So you feel very, back in nature. There's nothing to interrupt you. You get to just hang out with your friend and your dog and see beautiful sights and waterfalls. And it's amazing. So after we finished hiking, we're heading back to the parking lot, and my phone hits a signal, and all these messages come through. And the first one was from that woman that I was trying to reach. And she said, and I quote, I don't believe that my husband was your father. I believe that his brother is your father, and he's alive and well, and you have many siblings. She said, here's his contact information, and I gave him yours too. So I'm just trying to process this and, just didn't know what to say. So I look at the other messages coming through, and it's from my birth dad, or who might be my birth dad, right? So he says to me, if you were born on August 4th in this year, you weighed this much, your length was this much, you're born at this time, gave me all my birth facts, folks, all of them. He said, I believe you are my daughter, and I have been looking for you your whole life. Started to cry, and I handed the phone to Julie and I said, you have to read the rest of it. I can't read this. I can't see to read this. So she started to read it, the rest of his message, and she started to cry. And I'm laughing because I have this image stuck in my head. We were under a tree trying to not get rained on because we just had to read the messages right then and there, right? This is whole life-changing information. And I remember looking over and seeing somebody sitting in their car looking at us and think you could tell from their expression, like, why are they in the rain still? And why are they so emotional? Well, this is why, right? I finally found my birth dad. Finally found somebody that I'm related to, DNA wise, right? And so I got in touch with him, and he was not able to come visit me where I was. So I asked Julie, and she said, yes, let's go. So we drove like 2.5 hours, I think it was, to go meet him. On the way there, the rain, kept raining on and off and stuff, but sometimes it stopped. And at one point it stopped, and there were two rainbows, double rainbows, huge rainbows, and you could see the end of both of them, like all the different points. I had never seen that before in my life. And there are all these different things like that were happening that just, it was like a celebration, of like the heavens, that finally something was happening where I would know about my life, you know? So that driving felt like it was taking forever. And I kept saying to Julie some of the same things over and over again. Good thing she's a good friend, right? I was like, I cannot believe this is happening. I'm actually going to meet my father, and I don't even know what to say to him. And how, am I going to want to call him dad? I don't know. Am I going to want to hug him or not? I don't know. All that you don't know until you see the person, I suppose, right? And so I remember saying to Flynn, he was in the back seat, hanging out napping, like he likes to do. And I said to Flynn, you're going to smell somebody and meet somebody, your grandpa, who you'll actually know who my family is finally, because he'd met my family, but it's my adoptive family. So you don't smell like each other. There's no connection that way. But of course, there's the connection of being together for years. So that's totally different. So we got to Dad's house finally, after what felt like, 12 billion hours. And I remember, getting out of the car, and he's standing out on the porch, and I said, are you Bobby? That's his name. And he said, yes, I am. And I don't even remember walking to him. I just floated. I remember the stairs, though. I didn't want to fall and look like an idiot in front of my father. So I remember going up the stairs. But I got up there and I hugged him right away and started to cry a little bit. It was an amazing moment, right? It's just an amazing moment. It's something that you could not dream up. You have all these images that you imagine, like being reconnected and finding each other, but it's different than that. It was an amazing night. I think we had about 3.5 hours together. I met all of my sisters. One was over the phone. She's in Rhode Island, so I got to meet her that way. At least she called. And that's what impressed me. Like, my sisters showed up. They were all there to meet me. And because they loved Dad and they wanted to meet the sister that I learned later, or that night, that he'd always told them about me. Now, with the generation that I am, that was embarrassing, right? To have a child out of wedlock. I figured that, nobody mentioned my name ever, my to their children. My birth parents, I figured they would never say anything because it was just, people didn't do that back then. Well, these, you know, brothers and sisters, if you will, they grew up knowing about me, but just not knowing me. So I met my 5 sisters, 4 of them in person and 1 on the phone. I got to meet a niece too and a nephew, and, I think that's about everybody. So, like, some people's partners and stuff too, I think it was, but yeah. Oh, and dogs. Got to meet dogs. Dad's dog, Brooklyn, and then my one sister's dog that she had just gotten, like, I don't know if it was that day or a couple days before or something. So, pretty neat that way. Sadly, my brother, I did not get to meet him. He was the only boy in the family, and he passed away just 8 months before I got to find them. And so dad was heartbroken over that. You could even tell when he talked about it. It was only 8 months, and he was only 4 years younger than me, and I wish I could have met him. But my sister, my little sister, said something super sweet, and I think she and dad both believed it, that, you know, Jimmy helped me find them, which is pretty neat. So 3 hours visiting, which, there's so many stories you're trying to share. You're trying to catch up on decades of not seeing each other, knowing each other. They showed me family pictures. Oh my gosh, we talked about so many things, right? And it was mixed up conversation. There's all these people and just trying to get to know each other a little bit. And dad showed me his tattoo. I'll put a picture up. His tattoo where my name, my given name by my birth mom was Erin. So my name is Emily, right? So it's very similar. Um, and dad had that at the top of the cross that he has tattooed on his arm. So he showed me that, which is pretty special too, because it just kept hitting me that they actually did talk about me and they actually did think about me. I thought it was just never a thought in his mind again. Had no idea. And I know that's really stereotyping. We think men are like, oh, I made a kid, but who cares? She's out there somewhere. So I was buying into that stereotype. So I regret that. And I'm so grateful that my dad showed me a different way, that he wasn't that kind of man. Another neat thing that happened that night was that dad even said, I think this was not too long after um, Julie brought Flynn in and we were sitting there visiting, and dad was meeting Flynn, and he said, I smell, he said, your mom, Emily, smells like me, doesn't she? And I had just said that in the car. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where my dog craziness, right? Crazy for the canines, dog lover person came from. My dad loved dogs. He loved dogs. He would talked about how he had a bunch of dogs over the years. And he loved his pit, I think she's pit boxer or pit mix, Brooklyn, very much too. That night I got to see the letter from my birth mom to dad, and so I got to know her name, her main name, for the last name, but it was a start, right? Because I had no idea who she was before that. So I got to see where he knew the measurements, the time I was born, the day, and everything like that. So that was pretty neat to see that. So I saw her handwriting, and that gave me somewhere to jump off and look for her. And I'll talk about her in the next video. I'll talk about her in the next episode. I took pictures of that document, by the way, that letter too, so I could read it because I knew I was in overload, right? Emotionally, mentally. I mean, how do you grasp the fact that you have siblings that you didn't know about? They have kids. Um, you have a father that's thought about you and just gave up hope eventually because could not find you. It'd been decades and decades. So I'm glad I took pictures of that. I took pictures of some of the family pictures. I wish I'd taken more. I have some more that my sisters have sent me and my dad sent me too. But it was just so much to take in. If I thought about it, I would have said, Julie, take, use your phone and take all these pictures of all these pictures. But live and learn. And Julie, bless her heart, she was there in supporting role and she was watching over Flynn because I was in awe. I was in shock and awe, and I couldn't believe what was happening. So eventually we had to leave. We had to get back. Julie had a conference the next day. And I was okay because I got a headache from the stress and the excitement. And also, to be honest, dad, chain smoker. Oh my gosh. And in the house, which who does that these days? But, that's dad. So what are you going to do? But and I have asthma. So that's the other reason behind that. But it was just a lot. So I was actually glad to leave. I do not remember that ride home to the hotel at all. I have no memory of it. Nada. I think I was just caught up in all my memories and talking to Julie about it. So the next day I headed back home to Florida and had a horrible headache still, but I actually talked to dad for quite a while. I was getting very sleepy too, by the way. So dad, I don't know if he texted me or what, because he wanted me to keep checking in. That's very much him. And so then we talked for a while, and he talked to me for like the last hour or so, I want to say, or a couple hours. We just kept talking on the phone because he wanted to make sure that I got home safely because I was very tired from all the excitement and headaches and everything. So that is my story of finding dad. And then I got to talk to him many other times when I was traveling and driving on the road and really boring highways and stuff. So we got to catch up. And he would always, text me a lot. Not always, but text me a lot. Would text me at least a few times a week and check on me and ask me how I was. And he'd always ask, how's little Irish Flynn? Because Flynn is from Ireland originally. And dad was super sweet to me. And he really cared. And I was so grateful for that because that's just who doesn't need that in their life, you know? And I'm so grateful for dad. And the story is that I got to see him a couple more times in New York State, and I got to stay up there in my camper on his land there. Get to know my sisters last summer, 2023. I got to spend some time with them and get to know them better. Finally, meet the one sister that I met on the phone. Finally, met her 4 years later in person. And I'm so grateful for all of that. But there's just no easy way to tell you this. Um, I lost dad back in January. We all did. He died suddenly. What happened was first my sister Terry, who I didn't even get to know very well, she had a hard life and had her demons and stuff, and she was working at it, and was getting better and was going to be able to be reunited with her kids. So she had surgery that's pretty routine on the gallbladder, and then something happened and they took her back in, and she died on the operating table, early 40s. That's devastating enough, right? To lose out on that. But then 6 hours later, because I was in Arizona, I was a different time zone from New York State. And I called, and they literally were taking dad off of the machines. He was gone. So I never got to say goodbye. And I wish I'd talked to him more and text him more, but I'm glad I did what I did. He apparently fell twice, and the second time didn't get back up again. And so he either had he had heart problems apparently, and he smoked like a chimney, like I said. So he didn't recover and couldn't come back. So he either had a full-on heart attack or a stroke or something. We don't know. But he's gone, folks. 4.5 years is all I got with him. It's just not long enough. It's early 70s. Should have been around a lot longer, I feel. At least a few more years. So I'm doing this because I want to celebrate finding him. I want to celebrate him. And I want to encourage you to just go for it. If there's somebody you're trying to find, if there's something that you want to do, um, do it. Just do it. Today, please send your love to your loved ones. Text them, call them, do whatever you need to do. Because we don't know when it's going to be our time to go or their time to go. And I'm so, so grateful for finding dad. He connected me to my sisters. I have good memories of conversations with him. I don't have enough pictures with him. He and I don't like our pictures taken, but I'm glad for what I have. And thanks to him, I found mom. And I'll tell you about her in the next video. So grateful I have mom. I had a really rough year. I lost dad in January. She came down to be with me when I couldn't be at the funeral. Then I had to have eye surgery. So she came back down for that. And then I got to see her in a fun situation this summer at a family reunion in South Carolina. So I'll tell you about mom on the next one, but I'm sending you love and light. Thank God for dogs and the comfort they give us. Thank God for dog lovers like Dad, and thank God for knowing where I come from. I didn't even know I had such a big hole in my heart, but it filled it, even though it was broken in January. I'm still full and grateful.